And hello all and welcome to lesson 10B-1. It's really actually chapter 10, lesson 3 in the textbook. We're going to call today angle pairs, no homework to check. So let's go right in to our objective for the day. Today you should be able to leave this lesson saying, I know how to identify different angle pairs, and I know how to find the measure of a missing angle. Now think about this. In the past, we have classified angles like, say, acute angles and right angles. Of course, you have to have that symbol to display that it's right angle. Obtuse angles that are larger than 90 degrees, and of course, straight angles that are exactly 180 degrees. Now we're going to use that to then go ahead and say, hey, if I give you this 45-degree angle, can you find angle C? And if I give you that B is 90 degrees, can you find angle E? And can you use those to find angle D or angle A and so on? That's our focus. Now, yes, we will eventually have problems with equations. For instance, I plus 20 50, and we should be able to solve and find out what I is. But don't worry about the equation stuff yet. We're just going to focus on using our information to identify different angle pairs and find some missing angle. Can I ask you, please, if you'd be so kind, to go ahead and pause the video, classify each angle as acute, obtuse, right, straight. Come on back when you are ready. And we talk about the one top left-hand corner, that being acute. Can we find any more acute angles right here in the middle? Any more? I'm not seeing any. Let's talk about a right angle. That's a 90-degree angle. So the one on the left in the middle and the one on the right at the top. Now, obtuse angles are larger than 90 degrees, but you could also say are smaller than 180. 180 degrees, those are straight angles. That's what those would be. If you'd like, pause, rewind, and go back and try that exercise again. Meanwhile, we're going to talk about some other stuff. So let's go ahead and talk about the word congruent. Congruent angles have the same exact measure. Now to write the symbol for congruent, you make it look like an equal sign and then put a little tilde, a little swirl on top. So if you want to say angle, the measure of angle A is congruent to the measure of angle B, you would put that little equal sign with a symbol on top of that. Now, what about, can we identify which angles are congruent? Well, sure you can. You could actually put angles right on top of each other and say, yep, same size, same shape, those are congruent. Now, if I try to do that with any of the rest of them, you can clearly see that one's not going to fly. Whoops. And this one looks okay, but hey, looks can be deceiving. We've talked about that before in math class. And as you can see, those are not congruent. So the only pair of angles that are congruent would be this blue one with this black one. Congruent means exactly the same angle measurement. All right, so that's congruent. Now, I am going to put these notes on the internet. I'm going to hand them out in class. They're called Freyer diagrams, where you see up here in the top left-hand corner, where you can go ahead and write in your definition. What is a supplementary angle? Properties or facts, write in something else. And then I want you to be able to draw yourself your own little example. Maybe example problems, maybe we'll skip those, but I'll go ahead and do each of these discussions of angles, then I'll probably try to remind you, say, hey, hit pause, go to your notes, fill something out. Vertical angles is what we will start with, ladies and gents. Vertical angles are angles formed when they are opposite from each other when two lines intersect. And a note, they are always congruent. Think about that. So I could give you an example. I could actually give you a couple pairs of examples. Let's talk about angle MOP and angle NOQ. Now, if I could just pause for a second, please note that little symbol in front of MOP, that means angle. So that's why we would use those symbols. If I look at M to O, let me do a little disappearing ink here. M to O to P and N to O to Q. And then I go ahead and I draw that. Please notice that those angles are vertical angles and they are congruent. So I can put a couple tick marks in the middle. Let's try something different. M to O to N, angle MON, and angle POQ also look congruent. Now, notice I'll only use one tick mark for those. So those are vertical angles, ladies and gents. So at this time, I would ask you to pause, go to your notes section, fill out a definition, one of the properties, and use your own words. Please don't sit there and copy every single word. One of the properties, okay, all vertical angles, always congruent. You can write that in there. Draw your own little example, however that example might look like, and maybe use those angles. If you want, you can put the tick mark in them. And yeah, come on back when you are ready. So ladies and gents, moving right along, adjacent angles. Now, adjacent angles are side by side. That's what adjacent means. It means right next to each other. Notice they have a common vertex and a common ray. So let me give you an example of two angles that are adjacent angles. Angle MON and angle MOP. Notice they share ray OM. MOP. Those are called adjacent angles. They're right next to each other. They share a common vertex, vertex point O, and they share a common ray, ray OM. We could also do another set. Let me use a little crayon here. Angle NOQ along with angle QOP. Notice that they do share vertex O and ray OQ. Now notice if you did draw these, you would not say that they are the same length. Clearly they're not. So maybe I'll put one tick mark in one and two tick marks in the other, right? All right, pause for a second. Go ahead and write in the definition. Write in attributes. And draw your own little side-by-side adjacent angles. Please notice they do not have to form a straight angle. We'll talk about that. So if I wanted to draw, there's an angle, and if I just split it up, now I have a big angle and a small angle, and those are adjacent angles. Sorry, I did that in disappearing ink. All right, pause, come on back when you're ready. Onward we go. Complementary angles. Two angles measures have a sum of 90 degrees. Now, if I wanted to, I could put this up here, take a little protractor, and if I could put this right here, notice that angle MQN, I don't know if you could see that in the little box, looks to be about 26 degrees, which then means 26 plus what would be 90. So if the measure of angle MQN is 26 degrees, sorry I used crayon there, no idea why I did that, but let's stick to the theme, huh? Then angle NQP, in order for those to add up to 90, would have to be 64. So complementary angles, let me get rid of this. Two angles whose measures are 90 degrees. Please note, it's not limited to 26 and 64. You can make up a bunch of different ones. In fact, at this time, when you have a moment, go ahead and stop. Make up your own set of complementary angles. And if you had a protractor, I'd encourage you to measure it out. If you don't, that's okay. Keep the numbers simple if you'd like to. All right, pause, come on back when you're ready. So you should have filled out notes for complementary angles. Let's move on to supplementary angles. Supplementary angles also have a special sum, but in this case, their sum is 180 degrees. So if I was able to build this protractor up, and go ahead and make this a little bigger for everybody to see a little better. And now I'm going to go ahead and notice that angle MQN appears to be 27 this time. Gosh, I hope I didn't mismeasure the last one. My apologies if I did. So if angle MQN is 27 degrees, what must angle NQP be in order for these to be supplementary? If you guessed 153, you would be correct. Again, supplementary, add up the two measures, and they should have a sum of 180 degrees. So at this time, when you have a second, go ahead and pause, write in a definition, write in properties of supplementary angles. Oftentimes they are adjacent as well, not always. I guess it's possible to make two angles that some would be 90 degrees and they're not right next to each other. Some would be 180, excuse me, those two together. So go ahead, pause, draw yourself a picture. Come on back when you're ready. All right, so at this time, you should have come up with definitions, written kind of properties or facts, drawn your own illustration. And in terms of example problem, I wouldn't worry about that too much unless you find in future problems that you can come up with something on your own. I'm going to go ahead and ask you, if you'd like, to pause, try to work these out, name some vertical angle pairs, and come on back when you're ready. If you'd like, you can pause and actually do all of these. So vertical angles, remember vertical angles are kind of where two lines intersect and they're opposite of each other. If angle AOE is 47 degrees, then so too would angle COD. So I'm going to go ahead and write angle AOE and angle COD. All right, onward we go. What about adjacent angle pairs? Now there's all sorts of different examples on here, ladies and gents. So for instance, we can name angle BOC with angle COD. Now again, that looks like they're the same measurement, but they're actually not. So that's why I use 2 tick marks for one, 2 tick marks for the other. But again, there are all sorts of different examples, right? Here I chose angle BOC and angle COD, but you could have listed any other ones, for example. We could have done COD with DOE. Notice those are right next to each other. And as a matter of fact, those are supplementary. Let's go ahead straight to supplementary, huh? And if I picked angle AOE, then the one right next to it, whose sum would make a straight 180-degree angle, would be angle EOD. Those two angle pairs would be supplementary because whatever their measurements are, if you added them up, it would add a total of 180 degrees. And last but not least, we go to complementary. Now this one's going to be a little tougher, so I would just like to point out with a little disappearing ink firstly. If this guy is 90, then the one right next to it is 90 as well, right? Because if they make a straight 180-degree angle, then 90 plus 90 is equal to 180. Now let me go ahead and make that a little more permanent here. So I'm going to draw that. which then means that if I added these two up, they would equal 90 together. So I could write angle BOC and angle COD. Not only are those adjacent, but they are complementary. I didn't mean to use the same pair of angles for those two. It just kind of happened that way. And again, just to reemphasize that fact that yes, two angles can be adjacent and complementary, or two angles can be adjacent and supplementary, because if you add them up, they would have a measurement of 180 degrees and make a straight angle. All right, in class, I'm going to give out an exit ticket. Maybe I'll put that on Google Classroom. Meanwhile, your homework, ladies and gents, will look like this. Problems on the front and the back. Please notice the last part says use a protractor to measure it. Gosh, I have a class set of protractors that were not really good to share, so we might make that part optional for the assignment. Stay tuned in class. Take care, ladies and gents. Do well, and let's grow.